Shortly after the founding of New China, a scholar described his inner feelings in this way. The sky is blue, the water is sweet, and the air is fresh. We can breathe freely now. Honesty shows on the face of every passerby. I am experiencing spiritual happiness. With the arrival of a new era came also a feeling of joy, and the imperial palace turned a new page at a time when there was a new atmosphere. And this new page was turned in 1949. In a telegram, Mao Zedong instructed the People's Liberation Army, saying that they had to plan carefully before taking the city of Beijing so as to prevent damage to the former imperial palace, the universities, and other places of cultural and historic significance. On January 22nd, Fu Zhouyi, along with his troops, surrendered to the Communist Army, and with this, Beijing was liberated peacefully. The imperial palace had been spared of disaster. Several days later, when soldiers of the PLA marched into Beijing, among the crowds of people greeting the Communist Army was Ma Heng, the curator of the Palace Museum. At the time, he wrote in his diary, "The men of the PLA came into the city through Yongdingmen Gate. Their ranks stretched in neat order for several kilometers. It was an impressive spectacle." On March 6, 1949, the Forbidden City was taken over by the Military Control Commission of the PLA. Fu Lianzhong, a guard of the Forbidden City, witnessed the events of that day. Ying Da and Wang Yezhao, two representatives of the Military Control Commission, took charge of the Forbidden City. No less than 800 Palace Museum staff members were gathered in this hall, waiting in anticipation of this historic moment. The residents of Beijing celebrated the founding of New China on Tiananmen Square as if they were celebrating a festival. During this period, people frequently used this phrase, "All that was left undone is now being attended to." These are scenes of the Forbidden City in early 1949. A number of buildings had collapsed while the grass was growing everywhere in the compounds, and in many places piles of rubbish could be seen. Beijing locals were even referring to the former imperial palace as the dilapidated temple. In the early years of New China, the central government, even though it was short of money, appropriated special funds to repair the Forbidden City. These photos recorded the repair work undertaken in the Forbidden City in New China's early years. At the same time, the historic collections within the Palace Museum were being enlarged. cultural relics left behind in Tianjin by Puyi were retrieved, and more than 2,000 crates of cultural relics that had been sent to Nanjing by the Kuomintang government were also brought to the museum. In the spring of 1954, Mao Zedong even came up the wall of the Forbidden City. This photo of him was taken in the afternoon of May the 20th, on what was the third occasion Mao Zedong visited the former palace in just 4 days. He climbed up the walls simply to take a look at the Forbidden City, but sadly, no details of Mao Zedong's visit to the Imperial Palace had been found in any historical records. In 1956, Cheng Borju presented Mao Zedong Li Bai's On Yong Tai, possibly the only calligraphic work of this great poet of the Tang dynasty still extant. Mao Zedong cherished it greatly, but 2 years later he presented it to the Palace Museum. By this time, he had already donated 2 rare treasures to the palace: prose on the dance of 2 cranes in the handwriting of Wang Fuzhi, and the other was 13 postscripts on the Orchard Pavilion, a copy by Qian Dongbi. The new Chinese government began to collect cultural relics for the Palace Museum in a coordinated fashion, and in just a few years, more than 100 rare paintings and calligraphic works had been retrieved from private collectors in northeast China, Tianjin, and even abroad. In October 1953, the Hall of Paintings in the Palace Museum was opened to the public, in what was a major event in China's cultural circles. Government investment in the Palace Museum has continued to increase since that time, with repair work being carried out on a large scale, yet the vast majority of Beijing residents know little of the changes that have taken place within these palace walls. In the spring of 1956, people passing by Jingchan Street noticed that the northwestern watchtower of the Imperial Palace was now obscured by a huge workshed. Shortly after, a rumor quickly spread that the watchtower could not be restored, as the workers had damaged it.
外边人说爱怎么说怎么说吧，但是我们是为保护这个建筑。当时呢，在开工以前就动员，应该注意什么问题，一步一步的很慎重。当时呢，为了防止这个风吹雨洒呀，所以把这个外边做的罩把它罩起来，席棚把它罩起来。为的是什么呢？就是怕它里头再下雨啊、刮风侵蚀这个明代彩画。
The watchtower of the Forbidden City represents the best architectural techniques attained in ancient China. The extraordinary complex structure is composed of 9 beams, 18 columns, and 72 ridges. A story that became widespread in the Ming Dynasty claimed that the structure of the watchtower was so complex that the workers had been unable to finish it for a considerable time. One day, however, an old grasshopper seller came to the site, and as it happened, workers noticed that the structure of the grasshopper cages was similar to that of the watchtower. Taking note of the structure of the cages, they finally completed the watchtower with the cages in mind. As the story goes, that old grasshopper seller was master carpenter Lu Ban. As time went on, the Forbidden City changed with each passing day, just as New China also changed. After years of restoration, repair, and maintenance, the former imperial palace took on its former glory. This photo was taken in 1961. One of the two men seen here is Puyi, while the other is Lu Zhongling. 37 years before, Lu Zhongling, as commander-in-chief of the Beijing garrison, had expelled the abdicated Emperor Puyi from the palace. But when this photo was taken, the two men were meeting in New China's CPPCC Hall. As Puyi was visiting the imperial palace for the first time in almost 40 years, the visit did cause him more than a little emotional pain. But in his autobiography, The First Half of My Life, he wrote the following. To my surprise, the old and dilapidated palace I had known at the time I left the imperial palace was nowhere to be found. Every place looked brand new. In the imperial garden, I saw some kids playing in the sun. I saw some old men sipping tea in a tea house. I smelt the fragrance of ancient cypresses. The sunshine had become brighter. The imperial palace had gained a new life. "40 years have since passed, and the Forbidden City has entered the 21st century. This is another moment of historical significance. On the afternoon of June the 4th, 2004, a project aimed at the overall repair of the Forbidden City officially began. This was the largest Forbidden City repair project in almost 100 years, since the overthrow of China's last feudal rule in the Revolution of 1911. That revolution ushered in another flourishing period, comparable to that achieved by Emperors Kangxi and Qianlong of the Qing dynasty, although very different. The gigantic project put heavy responsibility on the staff members of the Palace Museum.
整个要修一遍，而且这一次和它的基础设施的建设，和它这个宫殿的实用功能，就是我这个宫殿修好以后干什么用？我是做库房呀，我是做展览室呀，我还是做原状陈列的这个地方。
所以这次在这个整个工程的定性上啊，我们说的叫做完整保护、整体维修。
This repair work is said to last for 19 years, and the total investment will come to 2 billion yuan. By the time of the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games, all buildings along the central axis will have taken on an as-new appearance. In 2020, the 600th birthday of the Forbidden City, all the repair work will have been completed. At this time, people will be able to see a Forbidden City as magnificent as during the flourishing period of Emperors Kangxi and Qianlong of the Qing dynasty. Work on the houses flanking the central axis in the Forbidden City began in June 2004, and cameras were tracking the process. 3 months after the start of the renovation work, when repair on the Hall of Imperial Peace at the northern end of the central axis was underway, an important discovery was recorded.
这藏文。
哎，你都别动了，老爷别动了，让他们来人吧。
Immediately after this, yet more discoveries were made.
得叫那个文物的。
叫他们来。1、2、起！
还有呢，哎呦，
哇，
这么多！
高举！
哎呦，
好，走，往那边走，给落下去啊！放下去。
In a period of just 1 week, more than 3,000 volumes of Buddhist scriptures were discovered, all written in Tibetan. This is a structural representation of the roof pommel of the Hall of Imperial Peace. The Buddhist scriptures were found in these 3 locations. This discovery is without doubt the greatest discovery in the Imperial Palace made since the establishment of the Palace Museum. The discovery of these Buddhist scriptures in the Tibetan language aroused considerable interest and speculation among experts engaged in the study of the Imperial Palace.
佛教的东西啊，那千殿可是道教的场所，
道教场所放的佛教，
放的佛教，
这有意思。
为什么？
中国人对宗教观了，
是三教合一。
The Hall of Imperial Peace was the most important Taoist temple in the Forbidden City, a place where the Taoist god Zhen Wu was worshipped. How then could it have come to be used as a place to keep Buddhist scriptures? Experts explain that Tibetan Buddhism began to find its way into the imperial court during the Yuan dynasty, that it became more popular in the Ming and Qing dynasties. It seems possible, therefore, that the Buddhist scriptures may have been placed in the hall during the Qing dynasty, at a time when the emperor was praying for favorable weather and national prosperity and peace. From a small proportion of the Buddhist scriptures set aside for study, the rest were placed back within the roof pommel. 2 of the principles adhered to in this large-scale repair project are to show respect to history and to restore the site to its original state as much as possible. In September 2005, all the repair work undertaken in the Hall of Imperial Peace was completed. One night in July 2004, timber for the repair project was being brought into the Forbidden City. Trucks carrying the timber were only allowed to enter the palace at around 1 in the morning. When the Forbidden City was constructed in the early Ming Dynasty, all the timber used was of the highest quality, nanmu and cedarwood, woods that are very hard to acquire. All the timber used in the repair of the Forbidden City this time is red pinewood from the greater Xing'an Mountains. And so far, at least 2,700 cubic meters of wood have been consumed for this purpose. Traditional materials and techniques are being used in order to retain the original appearance of the buildings in the Forbidden City. This young worker is applying a kind of anti-rot paste to the wood, and workers are preparing all the anti-rot paste used within the Forbidden City. This traditional anti-rot paste is a mixture of pig's blood, wheat flour, tung oil, and brick stucco. Artisans have learned to prepare this paste through oral instructions passed on from one generation to another, and the formula is a strictly kept secret. This technique was first used to repair the Forbidden City in the Qing dynasty. Rami is spread on the anti-rot paste layer to prevent the paste from cracking. In the case of objects that have a large surface area, such as gates, no less than 6 layers of anti-rot paste and 2 layers of Rami are applied. These traditional techniques used in the repair of the Forbidden City carry on the history of traditional Chinese architecture, a history that goes back several hundred years. The building that features the largest amount of gold in its decorations among the buildings in the Forbidden City is the Hall of Supreme Harmony. The floor tiles in the hall are called gold bricks, but in reality, they have nothing to do with gold at all. These so-called gold bricks were used exclusively to pave the floors of the Forbidden City, and the gold bricks seen in the Hall of Supreme Harmony were laid during the reign of Emperor Kangxi in the Qing dynasty. Yet despite the passing of so many years, they still shine like new. In the city of Suzhou, gold bricks have been made for several hundred years, and in May 2004, our cameras went to Lumor, a small town in the suburbs of Suzhou City, to watch the production process utilized to manufacture these gold bricks. In the old days, workers needed to work their way through 6 working procedures: the selection of the clay, the refining of the wet clay, the straining of the wet clay, the making of bases, the drying of bases in the shade, and of course firing. The clay has to be placed in the open air for a whole year in order to rid it of its earthy quality. The brick vases are dried in the shade for at least 7 months. The bases are fired in the kiln for 2 months, and during the firing, more than 50,000 kilograms of rice husks are consumed. Remarkably, the entire process of producing gold bricks takes 2 years. But why are they called gold bricks? One explanation is that these hard gold bricks give off a metallic sound when struck, but another explanation has it that during the Ming Dynasty, these gold bricks were as expensive as gold. These paving bricks being used near the ground of the Gate of Union were made by the Imperial Kiln in Suzhou. But during this large-scale repair project, the golden bricks in the major halls will not be replaced because they are still in very good condition, even after several hundred years. Large-scale repair project includes another extraordinary working procedure: gold plating. First, workers spread a layer of glue on an object and then spread gold foil on the glue. After being rubbed with cotton, a gold dragon appears. The gold foil used in this part of the repair project was made by the Nanjing Gold Foil Factory, which itself has a history of several hundred years. Gold bullion is beaten more than 20,000 times before it becomes gold foil. The gold foil is as thin as the wing of a cicada, as soft as silk, and as light as a goose feather. It is only 0.15 micrometers thick, about 1/500th of the diameter of a human hair. 10 million sheets of gold foil have been ordered for the repair project, and it will certainly make the Forbidden City more splendid. In March 2005, when the repair work of the Forbidden City was underway, another surprising discovery was made. Workers dismantling the roof of the Gate of Promoting Virtues discovered a metal box under a glazed tile in the center of the roof ridge. What did it contain?
这还有一个包，这包上也没字儿吧？
这可能是那元宝，
那是币吧？
这应该是石头，这是币。
哦，
又露出来了。
这币，
赶紧张开。
开一下那个，开一下。
Inside the box, experts of the Palace Museum found 24 gold coins inscribed with 4 Chinese characters meaning, "All is at peace." There were also 5 silk threads in different colors, 5 kinds of traditional Chinese medicine, 5 kinds of perfume, 5 shoe-shagged ingots of metal, and 5 colorful gems. According to experts, the treasure box had been placed here to appeal for peace. The number of each type of content was in the order of 5, consistent with the Taoist theory of the 5 elements. These treasures are now retained in the Management Office of Cultural Relics in the Palace Museum. This is a rare scene indeed in the history of the Imperial Palace. Here we can see overseas experts taking part in the Palace Museum repair project, and they're using the most advanced instruments in the world.
I just shot the backside forward and reverse. Oh, okay. So now it's doing this. Now I'm going to go through and force sight as the target.
One early morning in May 2005, before the Palace Museum was about to open, a number of foreigners could be seen in the square in front of the Hall of Supreme Harmony. But these were no ordinary foreigners, but experts in the field of restoration of cultural relics from the Ministry of Cultural Heritage of Italy. In the Hall of Supreme Harmony, Italian experts began to inject resin into the wall. This process will ensure that the surface of the wall does not peel off for a very long time. This method was used to restore frescoes by Leonardo da Vinci. But besides these experts from Italy, there are also experts from the United States, Japan, and China's Hong Kong. And these people are experts in the fields of ancient buildings, cultural relics, and digital technology.
故宫的保护不是故宫人的，也不仅是中国人民的，它是世界人民。海内外，特别是国外这些组织或机构对故宫文物保护上的支持呀，这我们感觉到这是它不仅是对故宫的古建筑中，它是对中华民族的尊重，它对源远流长的中华传统文化的尊重，所以我们对他们的这一种热心，我们都是给予积极的回应或表示欢迎的。
在正在进行大面积的修缮维修工作，可能会给您的参观带来不便，请您谅解。
Although the Studio of Tiredness of Diligence in the outermost north of the Palace of Peace and Longevity has never been open to the public, it is nevertheless an important trial location in the repair project. The work on the interior decoration on this site began in 2002.
Somebody that can go back to the studio on a bicycle to get my tools and to get more tools.
Your tools
Yeah.
in your studio.
Yeah, are in the studio, in the black roll.
他得把谁回去，他们到那个新工作室把他那工具给带过来，那工具给带过来。
我去吧。
啊，你去吧，那钥匙在你那塑料包里 ，OK 的。
And do you have any more of these?
啊，再拿几个起子。
这起子也有。
起子有。
Among those present is TK, an expert on cultural relics from the American Foundation of World Cultural Heritage, and he has in fact participated in the restoration work of many old paintings in many Asian countries. The Studio of Tiredness of Diligence, built by Emperor Qianlong for his leisure time after he abdicated his throne in favor of his son, is one of the most luxurious palaces in the Forbidden City. It represents the best interior decoration techniques utilized during the reign of Emperor Qianlong. But sadly, due to long years of neglect, the building was found to be in such bad condition that it clearly needed immediate repair. This painting on the ceiling of the Studio of Tiredness of Diligence was executed using Western perspective techniques by Wang Yo, a student of Giuseppe Castiglione, a court painter in the Qing dynasty. The repair of this work is a highly important task in the repair of the building as a whole, and it will be carried out jointly by the Palace Museum and the American Foundation of World Cultural Heritage.
Good job. Good job.
In this room in the Palace Museum, an expert is kneading wheat flour dough for the restoration of the painting in the Studio of Tiredness and Diligence. The dough will be used to remove dust from the surface of the painting without damaging the colors. As the painting on the ceiling of the Studio of Tiredness of Diligence is more than 200 years old, the repair work to be carried out needs to be done as meticulously as that carried out on painting regarded as national treasures. Following traditional working procedures, the entire repair process will entail nearly 100 stages. Not surprisingly, today it is extremely difficult to locate the 200-year-old paper mounted on the back of this painting. American experts suggested using paper made in South Korea, but experts from the Palace Museum would not agree to use foreign paper and insisted, quite naturally, on using Chinese paper. And after more than 1 year of searching, they finally located appropriate handmade paper in a small village in Jianshan in Anhui province. Seven experts have now worked on the ceiling painting for more than a year, and it will be restored to the Studio of Tiredness of Diligence when all the repair work in the building has been completed. While experts are repairing the ceiling painting, repair work on the inside of the Studio of Tiredness of Diligence continues. In May 2005, workers discovered an ivory covering of a flower bud while sorting through parts of the Studio of Tiredness of Diligence. These loose-colored glass beads are from some ornamental object. But why was this jade lid placed here in such a manner? Experts from the Palace Museum find themselves unable to come up with a satisfactory explanation. After several hundred years, the Forbidden City continues to surprise us. We still have no idea how many secrets are still waiting to be uncovered in this old and mysterious palace. While buildings in the Forbidden City are undergoing thorough external repair, great changes are also happening inside these buildings. The Hall of Clocks and the Hall of Jewelry were reopened to the public after the items were rearranged. Although the cultural relics are still the same, people entering these halls will have a totally different experience when they see them again. They will find that a larger number of cultural relics retained in the museum have been put on display using improved layouts. In 2004, the Palace Museum started to sort its collection of more than 1.5 million cultural relics in work that will last 7 years. All cultural relics, including the art collection, the collection of court utensils, and historical records, will be sorted thoroughly using the most advanced techniques in order to accomplish a standard management of these treasures. These treasures represent the essence of art over the past several thousand years, and they, together with the Imperial Palace itself, will be passed down as part of the common wealth of humankind to future generations.
故宫博物院作为社会和公众的博物院，应该是越来越年轻的，因为我们应该把一个古老的紫禁城、古老的故宫，用各种各样的方式 用多种多样的渠道把它提供给社会，让社会和公众走进紫禁城。
从午门进来，沿着参观路线，在观众的人群里一面走，一面听着观众的议论。特别是我们有了新的改进的展览，我们有了新的服务措施，得到观众的一种由衷的赞叹的时候，我会非常高兴。
我们这一代人应该碰上了最好的机遇，我们也有决心把我们这个民族文化遗产保护好，也有决心把故宫博物院建成世界一流的博物馆。
In October 2005, the Palace Museum celebrated its 80th birthday.
皇帝跟大臣们举行重大的仪式的就是在这里。那么太和是取自《周易》。
자, 여기가 바로 태화전입니다. 황제가 아침에 저희를 보고 그리고 나라의 큰 행사가 여기에서 다 태화전에서 진행이 되거든요. 그리고 양 옆에 보면 문무백관들이 줄을 서갖고
traverser la porte de l'harmonie suprême. Et maintenant, nous sommes sur la plus grande place dans la cité anarchique. Pourquoi on l'appelle la place de l'harmonie suprême? Parce qu'à l'époque de la
città proibita, siamo anche la sala del trono d'oro.
3, 2, 1. 1、2。
The Forbidden City was built in the Ming Dynasty and reached its zenith in the Qing Dynasty. Over a period of nearly 500 years, it was the symbol of supreme power in feudal China. But in 1925, the Imperial Palace became the Palace Museum. During 8 decades, it has experienced highs and lows, but it has finally become a public treasure house of art and culture, and today, it carries on this history, while at the same time, it contributes to the future.